It was one of those evenings that just feels right, you know? The kind where the sun is dipping below the horizon, casting long golden shadows across a bustling city square. The air carried a warm, almost playful vibe, kids laughing, vendors shouting their wares, and somewhere in the middle of it all, there's this street musician. He's a black man with calloused hands, strumming away on an old battered guitar. His music? Oh, it wasn't flashy or loud, it was soulful, like every note came straight from his heart. There's a small cardboard sign next to him that reads, "Raising money for children's charity." And people are drawn to him like moths to a flame. Coins clink into his open guitar case as strangers pause, nodding along, smiling, feeling something deep inside. It's harmonious, peaceful, a little pocket of joy in the chaos of the city. But then, something shifts. You can feel it in the air. A heaviness, maybe? Like the calm before a storm. The laughter starts to fade, replaced by distant engine growls. What's that sound? It's faint at first, but it grows louder, thunderous even. 6 motorcycles roar into the square, their engines growling like angry beasts. These bikers aren't here for fun, they mean business. Leather jackets, menacing patches, boots thudding against the pavement, they take over the space like a dark cloud rolling in. Smiles turn into wary glances, conversations trail off, and suddenly, the once harmonious square feels tense. Among the crowd stands John Cena. Yeah, that John Cena. He's tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a simple gray hoodie and jeans, blending in but standing out all at once. His eyes narrow slightly as he watches the bikers park in a loose circle. Something about them doesn't sit right. He steps closer, not saying a word yet, but you can tell he's ready. Ready for whatever comes next. The first rumble of engines shattered the melody. It wasn't just noise, it was an intrusion, loud and aggressive, like a storm rolling in without warning. 6 bikers roared into the square on thunderous motorcycles, their leather jackets glinting under the fading light. The patches sewn onto their backs told stories of intimidation and dominance, skulls, flames, and words that made your skin crawl. They parked in a loose circle, boots thudding against the rough pavement as they swaggered toward the musician. Their laughter was crude, abrasive, cutting through the hum of conversation like a knife. What's happening? Smiles faded, replaced by wary glances. People moved aside instinctively, creating space for the bikers, but also putting distance between themselves and trouble. John Cena, still standing near the edge of the crowd, tensed visibly. His sharp eyes locked onto the leader, a tall, bearded man exuding arrogance with every step. The leader stopped just a few feet from the musician, his shadow falling over the man and his battered guitar. "Hey buddy," he sneered, his voice dripping with mockery. "You think this is your stage? You think anyone here actually cares about your little songs?" The musician hesitated briefly but kept playing, determined not to let them disrupt his performance. The leader leaned down closer, his smirk widening as he straightened up and gestured to his gang. "Look at this guy," he barked, laughing. "Playing his heart out, thinking he's some kind of hero." One of the bikers, a stocky man with a chain around his neck, chimed in with a grin. "Doesn't he know this is our turf? He's got no business being here." Another biker, younger and leaner, added with a sneer, "Maybe he thinks he's too good to move. Look at him, acting like he belongs here." The musician's hands trembled slightly, but he didn't stop. His voice was calm but firm when he finally spoke. "I'm not here to bother anyone. I'm raising money for kids who need help." The leader snorted, rolling his eyes. "For kids? You think you're some kind of saint? Nobody asked for your charity, pal." His tone turned menacing. "How about you pack up and leave before we make you?" John's jaw tightened. He stepped closer, blending into the crowd but staying silent, for now. The tension in the air was palpable, almost suffocating. You could feel it in the way people shifted uncomfortably, their unease growing with each passing second. Something bad was coming, and everyone knew it. The tension in the square thickened like a storm cloud ready to burst. The stocky biker, still grinning with cruel amusement, kicked the open guitar case hard enough to send coins and bills scattering across the rough pavement. "Oops," he said mockingly, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Looks like your charity just got a little lighter." The musician stopped playing and bent down to collect the scattered money, but before he could gather much, the leader grabbed him by the shoulder and shoved him back into his chair. The leader sneered, leaning closer. "Not until you apologize for being here. This square belongs to us, and we don't like your kind hanging around." The musician looked up, his gaze steady despite the fear flickering behind his eyes. His hands trembled slightly as he gripped the edges of his seat, but his voice was calm and firm. "I'm not leaving," he said, his words carrying an unexpected weight. "I have just as much right to be here as anyone else." The leader's smirk twisted into something darker, a mix of anger and disbelief. "You've got guts, I'll give you that," he spat, his tone sharp. "But guts don't mean squat when you're outnumbered." He gestured to his gang, who laughed and closed in around the musician, their boots scraping against the textured pavement. One of them, a wiry man with tattoos snaking up his neck, reached down and snatched the battered guitar from the musician's lap. Holding it up mockingly, he sneered, "This piece of junk? You think this is going to save anyone?" With a loud crash, he slammed the guitar onto the ground, shattering it into pieces. The sound echoed through the square, sharp and final, like the breaking of hope itself. The musician's face tightened, but he didn't react. He simply stared at the broken instrument, his hands resting on his knees. His posture remained straight, almost defiant, even as the leader stepped forward, his voice rising now. "Get up and get out of here before I make you." Slowly, deliberately, the musician stood. Despite the odds stacked against him, there was no trace of submission in his stance. "I'm not going anywhere," he said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper but laced with unshakable resolve. The leader's patience snapped. He raised his fist, aiming for the musician's face. The crowd collectively held its breath, too afraid to intervene, but then everything changed. Just as the leader's fist was about to connect with the musician's face, a firm hand shot out, gripping his wrist mid-swing. The square fell silent. All eyes turned to Cena, who stood tall and imposing, his expression calm but deadly serious. "That's enough," John said, his voice steady and commanding, cutting through the tension like a knife. The leader tried to pull his arm free, but John's grip didn't budge. "Who the hell are you?" the leader snarled, his tone more defensive than aggressive. Before John could respond, one of the younger bikers gasped and whispered loudly, "That's Cena, the wrestler." The leader's eyes widened briefly before he laughed, the sound echoing across the square. His voice dripped with mockery as he sneered, "A wrestler? What's this, a joke? Wrestling doesn't work in the real world, buddy." John's gaze didn't waver. His grip on the leader's wrist tightened slightly, causing the man to wince. "You're about to find out just how real it can get," John replied evenly, his tone leaving no room for doubt. The leader yanked his arm free, rubbing his wrist and stepping back. His bravado quickly returned as he glanced at his gang. "All right, boys. Let's show this guy what happens when you mess with us." He pointed at John. "Take him down." The first biker charged, his heavy boots thudding against the rough pavement as he swung a punch at John's head. John sidestepped effortlessly, catching the man's arm mid-swing and twisting it behind his back with a smooth motion. With practiced precision, He hoisted the biker off his feet and slammed him onto the ground with a powerful attitude adjustment. The crowd gasped, and for a brief moment, the square went completely silent. The second biker rushed in, faster this time, aiming a wild swing at John's torso. But John ducked under the blow, grabbing the man's waist in one swift motion. He executed a suplex, sending the biker sprawling across the pavement. The man groaned in pain, clutching his back as he rolled away. The remaining bikers hesitated, clearly shocked by John's speed and strength. "Don't just stand there," the leader barked, his voice rising in frustration. Two bikers charged at once, trying to overwhelm John with their combined force. John took a step back, analyzing their movements. As the first one lunged, John sidestepped again, catching the man by the arm and spinning him into the second attacker. The two collided and fell in a heap, their grunts of pain blending with the sound of laughter from the now emboldened crowd. Another biker tried to sneak up from behind, raising a heavy chain and swinging it toward John's back. But John turned just in time, catching the chain with both hands. He yanked it out of the biker's grasp and tossed it aside, stepping forward to deliver a well-placed shoulder tackle that sent the man crashing into a nearby trash can. The impact was loud, and the trash can toppled over, spilling its contents onto the pavement. The leader, now visibly angry, stepped forward, cracking his knuckles. "All right, tough guy. Let's see how you handle me." He lunged at John with a flurry of punches, but John blocked each one with precision, his movements calculated and efficient. When the leader tried to grab him, John countered with a spinning back elbow that caught him square in the jaw, sending him staggering backward. John didn't let up. He moved in quickly, grabbing the leader by the collar and delivering his signature five-knuckle shuffle, a powerful forearm strike that dropped the man to his knees. The leader groaned, clutching his face as John towered over him. "Had enough?" John asked, his voice calm but firm. The leader didn't respond, too dazed to form words. The remaining bikers, seeing their leader defeated and their group scattered, began to back away cautiously. One of them helped the leader to his feet, and the group retreated toward their motorcycles, stumbling away in defeat. The confrontation erupted into action when the stocky biker charged Cena, swinging wildly. His heavy boots thudded against the rough pavement as he threw a punch aimed at John's head. The crowd collectively flinched, bracing for impact, but it never came. With effortless agility, Cena sidestepped the blow, catching the man's arm mid-swing. In one fluid motion, he twisted the biker's arm behind his back and hoisted him off his feet. The attitude adjustment was executed with precision, slamming the biker onto the ground with a force that echoed through the square. Gasps rippled through the stunned onlookers. What just happened? The stocky biker groaned in pain, clutching his back as he rolled away, but there was no time to recover. Another biker rushed in, faster this time, aiming a wild swing at Cena's torso. Cena ducked under the blow, grabbing the man's waist in one swift motion. He executed a suplex, sending the attacker sprawling across the textured pavement. The man's body hit the ground with a thud, and he lay there moaning, clearly out of the fight. The remaining bikers hesitated, their confidence shaken by Cena's speed and strength. Their leader barked orders, trying to rally them. "Don't just stand there. Get him." Two more bikers lunged simultaneously, attempting to overwhelm Cena with sheer numbers. But Cena analyzed their movements like a chess player anticipating his opponent's next move. As the first biker swung, Cena sidestepped again, catching the man by the arm and spinning him into the second attacker. The two collided and fell in a heap, their grunts of pain blending with the sound of laughter from the now emboldened crowd. One biker tried to sneak up from behind, wielding a heavy chain. Cena turned just in time, catching the chain mid-swing with both hands. He yanked it out of the man's grasp and tossed it aside, stepping forward to deliver a well-placed shoulder tackle, The biker crashed into a nearby trash can, the metallic clang reverberating through the square. The impact sent the trash can toppling over, spilling its contents onto the pavement. The leader, visibly furious, stepped forward, cracking his knuckles. "All right, tough guy," he growled, launching a flurry of punches. Cena blocked each blow with calculated efficiency, his movements sharp and deliberate. When the leader tried to grab him, Cena countered with a spinning back elbow that caught him square in the jaw, sending him staggering backward. Seizing the moment, Cena moved in quickly, grabbing the leader by the collar and delivering his signature five-knuckle shuffle. The powerful forearm strike dropped the man to his knees, leaving him clutching his face in pain. Cena stood over him, his expression calm but firm. "Had enough?" he asked, his voice steady. The leader didn't respond, too dazed to form words. The remaining bikers, seeing their leader defeated and their group scattered, began to back away cautiously. One of them helped the leader to his feet, and the group retreated toward their motorcycles, stumbling away in defeat. One biker, emboldened by misplaced confidence, tried to sneak up from behind, wielding a heavy chain. Cena turned just in time, his sharp eyes catching the glint of metal swinging toward him. With reflexes honed over years of training, he caught the chain mid-swing, yanking it out of the man's grasp and tossing it aside like it was nothing more than a toy. The crowd gasped again. This wasn't scripted, this was real. Cena didn't hesitate. He stepped forward, delivering a powerful shoulder tackle that sent the biker tumbling into a nearby trash can. The metallic clang echoed through the square as the trash can toppled over, spilling its contents onto the textured pavement. "That's how you handle a thug." The crowd erupted into cheers, their fear replaced with admiration and relief. The leader, now visibly furious, stepped forward, cracking his knuckles. "All right, tough guy," he growled, launching a flurry of punches. Cena blocked each blow with precision, his movements calculated and efficient. When the leader tried to grab him, Cena countered with a spinning back elbow that caught him square in the jaw, sending him staggering backward. Seizing the moment, Cena moved in quickly, grabbing the leader by the collar and delivering his signature five-knuckle shuffle. The powerful forearm strike dropped the man to his knees, leaving him clutching his face in pain. Cena stood over him, his expression calm but firm. "Had enough?" he asked, his voice steady. The leader didn't respond, too dazed to form words. The remaining bikers, seeing their leader defeated and their group scattered, began to back away cautiously. One of them helped the leader to his feet, and the group retreated toward their motorcycles, stumbling away in defeat. Defeated, the bikers scrambled to their feet, helping their groaning leader retreat toward their motorcycles. The square erupted into applause as people cheered, clapping and whistling, their relief palpable. Cena turned back to the musician, who still stood near the remnants of his broken guitar. His posture was rigid, but there was a flicker of gratitude in his eyes. "I'm sorry about your guitar," Cena said softly, crouching down to pick up the scattered pieces. He examined the shattered wood carefully, running his fingers over the splintered edges. "Are you okay?" The musician nodded slowly, his voice quiet but steady. "Thanks to you. I didn't think anyone would step in." Cena placed a reassuring hand on the man's shoulder, his touch firm yet gentle. "You stood your ground when it mattered. That takes courage." The crowd, which had been watching in stunned silence, began to clap and cheer again. People stepped forward, picking up the musician's scattered money and placing it back into the guitar case. Someone in the crowd called out, "Let's get him a new guitar." The suggestion was met with enthusiastic agreement, and a few people started collecting donations on the spot. John watched as the square came back to life, the energy shifting from fear and tension to hope and support. The bikers, defeated and humiliated, roared away on their motorcycles, their noise fading into the distance. The leader cast one last angry glance at John before disappearing into the night. Turning back to the musician, John smiled faintly. "Looks like you've got some good people here. Keep playing, and don't let anyone stop you." The musician's lips curved into a small smile. "I won't, not after tonight." As the crowd continued to cheer and donate, John stepped back, blending into the background. He knew his job was done for now, but the fight for justice, no matter how small or big, was far from over. The square began to settle after the chaos caused by the bikers. People gathered around the street musician, helping him collect his scattered money and the broken remains of his guitar. The air buzzed with murmurs of admiration for Cena, who stood a short distance away, ensuring the bikers were gone for good. His sharp eyes scanned the perimeter, confirming they wouldn't be returning. Satisfied, he walked back toward the musician, whose determination had impressed him as much as his music. The musician looked up as John approached, his expression a mix of gratitude and exhaustion. "I don't know how to thank you," he said quietly, his voice still steady despite the ordeal. "If you hadn't stepped in, I don't know what would have happened." John crouched down to gather the last of the scattered coins and bills, placing them carefully back into the musician's open case. "You don't need to thank me," he replied. "You stood your ground. That takes real strength." The musician hesitated for a moment before speaking again. "It wasn't just about me," he said, glancing at the broken pieces of his guitar. "I'm doing this for the kids. They're counting on me. That's why I couldn't walk away." John nodded, understanding the deeper motivation that had kept the man rooted despite the biker's aggression. "What you're doing is important. It's worth fighting for." The square began to come alive again as the crowd, emboldened by John's actions, moved closer. Several people started collecting donations, their voices echoing with calls to support the musician and replace his destroyed guitar. A young woman approached, holding out her phone. "I got the whole thing on video," she said excitedly. "The way you took them down, it was incredible. People need to see this." John shook his head slightly. "It's not about me," he said firmly. "What matters is him and what he's doing here. Share his story." The musician gave a small, grateful nod, but said nothing. His focus was on the donations being gathered, a flicker of hope lighting up his tired eyes. The crowd's support was growing, with people stepping forward to contribute. A local shop owner emerged, holding a brand-new acoustic guitar. "I saw what happened," the man said warmly. "Take this, it's on the house." The musician's hands trembled as he accepted the guitar, his voice thick with emotion. "Thank you," he managed to say, his words barely above a whisper. He adjusted the strap and tested the strings, the familiar sound immediately filling the square once more. The crowd erupted into applause, their cheers echoing through the evening air as the musician began to play. The energy of the square shifted entirely. What had been a scene of fear and tension just moments ago was now a celebration of resilience and community. John stood back, watching as the musician reclaimed his space with every note he played. The sound was stronger now, bolstered by the support of the crowd and the unbroken spirit of the man holding the guitar. One by one, people approached John to thank him for his bravery. "You didn't just protect that man," an older woman said, tears glistening in her eyes. "You reminded all of us that standing up for what's right still matters." John accepted their gratitude with quiet humility, deflecting attention back to the musician. "He's the one who didn't back down," he said. "I just made sure he had the chance to keep standing." A child tugged at John's sleeve, holding out a crumpled dollar bill. "For the guitar guy," the boy said, his eyes wide with admiration. John smiled, taking the bill and handing it to the musician, who accepted it with a warm smile and a nod of thanks. The square's energy reached its peak as more people joined in. Families danced to the musician's songs, couples swayed, and the atmosphere became one of unity and joy. John couldn't help but smile, knowing this was the kind of moment worth fighting for. It wasn't just about standing up to bullies. It was about creating a space where kindness and resilience could thrive. As the night deepened, John prepared to leave, sensing that his role here was complete. Before he could slip away, the musician called out to him. "Wait." John paused, turning back toward the musician. "You've already done so much," the musician said, his voice filled with sincerity, "but I have to ask, why did you step in? You didn't know me. You could have just walked away." Inspired by Cena's intervention, the crowd rallied around the musician with an outpouring of support that transformed the square into a scene of unity and resilience. People began gathering the scattered money, placing it back into the guitar case with care. Some even dug into their pockets to contribute more, tossing bills and coins into the case as they expressed their gratitude for the musician's courage. "Let's get him a new guitar," someone shouted, their voice rising above the hum of conversation. The suggestion was met with enthusiastic agreement, and a few people immediately started organizing a collection on the spot. A young woman stepped forward, holding out her phone to record the moment. "This needs to be shared," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. "People need to see what happened here tonight." John Cena stood nearby, blending into the background but still watching closely. He noticed the way the crowd had shifted from fear to action, their energy now focused on supporting the musician. It wasn't just about replacing a broken instrument, it was about reclaiming the space, standing against intimidation, and showing solidarity. A local shop owner emerged from his store, holding a brand-new acoustic guitar. His face was warm with kindness as he approached the musician. "I saw what happened," he said, extending the guitar toward him. "Take this, it's on the house." The musician's hands trembled as he accepted the gift, his voice thick with emotion. "Thank you," he managed to say, his words barely above a whisper. He adjusted the strap carefully, running his fingers over the polished wood. Testing the strings, he began to play, filling the square once more with music. The first notes resonated deeply, carrying a renewed sense of purpose. The melody was simple yet powerful, cutting through the night air like a beacon of hope. Families danced playfully, couples swayed romantically, and children clapped along enthusiastically. The atmosphere shifted entirely, transforming from fear and tension to joy and unity. John watched as the musician reclaimed his space, his posture upright and confident despite the earlier chaos. Every note seemed to erase the memory of the biker's aggression, replacing it with a spirit of resilience. One by one, people approached John to thank him for his bravery. "You didn't just protect that man," an older woman said, tears glistening in her eyes. "You reminded all of us that standing up for what's right still matters." John accepted their gratitude with quiet humility, deflecting attention back to the musician. "He's the one who didn't back down," he said firmly. "I just made sure he had the chance to keep standing." A child tugged at John's sleeve, holding out a crumpled dollar bill. "For the guitar guy," the boy said, his eyes wide with admiration. John smiled, taking the bill and handing it to the musician, who accepted it with a warm smile and a nod of thanks. As the night deepened, the square became a lively hub of positivity. Local business owners joined the crowd, bringing out food and drinks to share with those who had gathered. One man in an apron approached John with a warm smile, offering him a cold bottle of water. "You didn't just protect that man," the shop owner said, his voice filled with sincerity. "You reminded all of us that there are still good people in this world. Thank you." John accepted the water with a nod of appreciation but didn't linger on the praise. His focus remained on the musician, who now seemed completely at ease, his confidence restored by the overwhelming support surrounding him. John noticed a young boy approach the musician shyly, clutching a crumpled piece of paper. The boy handed it over, and the musician paused his playing to read it. A wide smile spread across his face as he ruffled the boy's hair and began playing a cheerful tune, one that had the children in the square laughing and clapping along. The sense of unity was palpable, but John knew the bikers might still pose a threat. He moved discreetly toward the edge of the square, scanning the nearby streets for any signs of their return. His presence alone was enough to reassure the crowd, though he remained alert, ready to act if necessary. As the night wore on, the musician finally paused his performance to address the crowd. His voice, though soft, carried a weight of gratitude. "Thank you all for being here tonight," he said, his gaze sweeping across the faces before him. "Your kindness means more than I can say. Every dollar you've given will go toward helping kids who need it most. This guitar," he held up the instrument, his smile bright, "is more than just wood and string. It's a symbol of what we can do when we stand together." The crowd erupted into applause, their cheers echoing across the square. John watched from a distance, his lips curving into a small smile. The musician's words resonated deeply, turning the night into a moment none of them would forget. As the applause died down, a few people approached John personally to thank him for his bravery. One older woman, her voice trembling with emotion, said, "You didn't just protect that man, you protected all of us. Thank you for reminding us that there are still good people in this world." John met her gaze, his voice steady. "Sometimes all it takes is one person to stand up. But tonight, it wasn't just me. Everyone here played a part." The woman nodded, her eyes glistening with tears, and returned to the crowd. John reflected on the events of the night, knowing that moments like this were rare but powerful, capable of inspiring change far beyond the confined scene of the square. Before long, the crowd began to disperse. Families headed home, and business owners packed up their stalls. The musician stayed behind, carefully packing his new guitar into its case and counting the donations he had received. John approached him quietly, his steps soft but purposeful. "You're going to do great things with this," he said, gesturing to the guitar and the pile of money. "Don't let anyone take that from you." The musician looked up, his expression a mix of gratitude and determination. "I won't," he said firmly. "Not after tonight. You've shown me that standing up is worth it, even when it's hard." As the celebration continued, Cena blended into the background, ensuring the bikers didn't return. His towering figure stood near the edge of the square, partially shadowed by a lamppost but still visible to those who looked closely. His sharp eyes scanned the perimeter, confirming that the threat was truly gone. The crowd, now emboldened and joyous, had shifted their focus entirely to the musician, whose performance seemed to grow stronger with every note. A young woman approached Cena, holding out her phone. "I got the whole thing on video," she said excitedly, showing him footage of the altercation that was already going viral online. "The way you took them down, it was incredible. People are calling you a hero." Cena shook his head slightly, his voice calm but firm. "It's not about me," he said, gesturing toward the musician. "What matters is him and what he's doing here. Share his story, that's what matters." The woman nodded, clearly moved by his humility. She stepped back into the crowd, continuing to record the musician's performance. The man's hands moved skillfully across the strings of his new guitar, his music carrying a renewed sense of purpose. Each note seemed to reclaim the space, erasing the hatred and fear that the bikers had tried to instill. Meanwhile, a few local business owners joined the crowd, bringing out food and drinks to share with those who had gathered. One of them, a middle-aged man in an apron, approached Cena with a warm smile. "You didn't just protect that man," he said, handing John a cold bottle of water. "You reminded all of us that standing up for what's right still matters. Thank you." Cena accepted the water with a nod of appreciation but didn't linger on the praise. His focus remained on the musician, who now seemed completely at ease, his confidence restored by the overwhelming support surrounding him. As Cena observed, he noticed a young boy approach the musician, clutching a crumpled piece of paper. The boy shyly handed it over, and the musician paused his playing to read it. A wide smile spread across his face as he ruffled the boy's hair and began playing a cheerful tune, one that had the children in the square laughing and clapping along. The sense of unity was palpable, but Cena knew the bikers might still pose a threat. He moved discreetly toward the edge of the square, scanning the nearby streets for any signs of their return. His presence alone was enough to reassure the crowd, though he remained alert, ready to act if necessary. As the night wore on, the musician finally paused his performance to address the crowd. His voice, though soft, carried a weight of gratitude. "Thank you all for being here tonight," he said, his gaze sweeping across the faces before him. "Your kindness means more than I can say. Every dollar you've given will go toward helping kids who need it most. This guitar," he held up the instrument, his smile bright, "is more than just wood and string. It's a symbol of what we can do when we stand together." The crowd erupted into applause, their cheers echoing across the square. Cena watched from a distance, his lips curving into a small smile. The musician's words resonated deeply, turning the night into a moment none of them would forget. As the applause died down, a few people approached Cena personally to thank him for his bravery. One older woman, her voice trembling with emotion, said, "You didn't just protect that man, you protected all of us. Thank you for reminding us that there are still good people in this world." Cena met her gaze, his voice steady as he replied, "Sometimes all it takes is one person to stand up. But tonight, it wasn't just me. Everyone here played a part." The woman nodded, her eyes glistening with tears, and returned to the crowd, leaving Cena to reflect on the events of the night. He knew that moments like this were rare but powerful, capable of inspiring change far beyond the confines of the square. Before long, the crowd began to disperse. Families headed home, and business owners packed up their stalls. The musician stayed behind, carefully packing his new guitar into its case and counting the donations he had received. Cena approached him quietly, his steps soft but purposeful. "You're going to do great things with this," Cena said, gesturing to the guitar and the pile of money. "Don't let anyone take that from you." The musician looked up, his expression a mix of gratitude and determination. "I won't," he said firmly. "Not after tonight. You've shown me that standing up is worth it, even when it's hard." Cena placed a hand on the man's shoulder, giving it a reassuring squeeze. "Keep playing," he said simply. "Your music has a way of bringing people together. Don't stop." As Cena turned to leave, the musician called out, "Wait. Can I play one more song for you?" Cena paused, then nodded. The musician picked up his guitar and began to play, a slow, soulful tune. The melody carried across the now quiet square, filling the air with a sense of resilience, hope, and the power of standing together against adversity. Cena stood and listened, letting the music wash over him. It was a fitting end to a night that had started with conflict, but ended with unity and strength. When the final note faded into the night, Cena gave the musician one last nod before disappearing into the shadows, leaving the square filled with the lingering spirit of his courage and the musician's music. Before disappearing into the night, Cena exchanged a final handshake with the musician, who handed him a flyer for an upcoming charity event. "If you're ever in the area, come by," the musician said, his voice filled with sincerity. "I'll be performing at a charity event next month. It would mean a lot to have you there." Cena took the flyer, studying it briefly before slipping it into his pocket. "I'll see what I can do," he replied with a faint smile. "But whether I'm there or not, I know you'll make an impact." The two men shared a moment of mutual respect before the musician slung his guitar case over his shoulder and turned to leave. His steps were lighter now, his posture upright and confident despite the chaos of the evening. The weight of the night still lingered in his mind, a mixture of fear, gratitude, and the overwhelming support he had received from the crowd, but it no longer felt like a burden. Instead, it felt like fuel, a reminder that standing up for what's right could inspire others to do the same. As the musician disappeared down the street, his silhouette blending with the dim glow of the city lights, Cena stood for a moment longer, watching him go. He glanced back at the square, now empty and quiet, its vibrant energy replaced by the hum of distant traffic and the soft amber glow of lamplight. The transformation of the space was remarkable. What had started as a scene of tension and hostility had ended as a testament to courage and unity. John allowed himself a brief moment of reflection. The night had begun as a simple stroll through the bustling city square, but it had turned into something far more meaningful. This wasn't the first time he'd faced physical confrontations, but this fight had been different. It hadn't been about winning or losing, it had been about dignity, justice, and protecting someone's right to be heard. The events of the evening replayed in his mind like scenes from a movie, the musician's soulful melodies cutting through the noise, the biker's aggressive posturing, the crowd's initial fear followed by their emboldened support, and finally, the musician reclaiming his space with every note he played. Cena knew that while the fight against injustice was far from over, moments like this reminded him why it was worth it. By the time he reached the edge of the city, the first hints of dawn were beginning to paint the sky. Soft streaks of orange and pink stretched across the horizon, casting a warm glow over the streets. John glanced over his shoulder once more, as if to ensure the square was truly at peace before disappearing into the early morning light. Behind him, the city carried on, its rhythm unbroken by the events of the night. But the memory of what had happened, that quiet testament to the power of courage and unity, would stay with everyone who had witnessed it. As John walked away, he thought about the ripple effect of standing up for others. The musicians' resolve had inspired the crowd, and their support had, in turn, strengthened the musician's spirit. It was a cycle of courage, one person standing up, another joining in, and together creating something bigger than themselves. John smiled faintly, knowing that the night's impact would extend far beyond the square. People would share the story, not just of the wrestler who stepped in, but of the musician who refused to back down. They would remember the donations, the new guitar, and the sense of community that had emerged from adversity. And so the question remained, what would you have done in this situation? Would you have stepped in? Would you have stood your ground? Or would you have walked away, hoping someone else would take action? As John disappeared into the morning light, the square remained, a silent witness to the power of standing together. The musician's music still echoed in the air, a reminder that even in the face of cruelty and hate, courage and compassion could prevail. The night had transformed the square into a lively hub of positivity, with uplifting melodies filling the air and bringing people closer. Families had danced, couples had swayed, and children had laughed, all because one man had chosen to stand his ground and another had chosen to stand with him. It was a night to remember, not just for those who had been there, but for anyone who heard the story. A night that proved, once again, that good always triumphs over evil when we stand together.
And that's where our story ends. What did you think of this story? Share your emotions in the comments below. We'd love to know what you remember most. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more unforgettable stories. And if you are in the mood for another exciting story, check out our next video. It's waiting for you. Until then, stay curious, get inspired, and keep exploring the stories that make life extraordinary. See you in the next one.